number 22 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Justice and Human Rights. Today we have Mr. Massey replacing Mr. Garrison and Mr. Waugh replacing Mr. Moore. Welcome back to both of you from our last meeting. Just a reminder to members and witnesses, the proceedings will be available via the House of Commons website. And just so that you're all aware, the webcast will always show the person speaking rather than the entirety of the committee. To ensure an orderly meeting, I'd like to outline the following rules. Interpretation services are available for this meeting. You have the choice at the bottom of your screen to either select floor, English, or French. Members and witnesses may speak in the official language of your choice. With the latest Zoom version, you may now speak in the language of your choice without the need to select the corresponding language channel, which basically means select the language you want to hear and you can speak any language that you would like. Just make yourselves familiar with the raise hand function at the bottom of the screen if you have the latest Zoom updates. And I'll remind members and witnesses before speaking, please wait until I recognize you by name. If you're on the video conference, which I believe all of you are, please click on the microphone icon to unmute yourself. And just know that when you are done speaking, your microphone should be on mute. Speak slowly and clearly for the sake of our interpreters so that everybody can get the translation in a good way and we're not putting too much of a strain on our interpreters. And a reminder that all comments by members and witnesses should be addressed through the chair. With regard to a speaking list, Mr. Clerk and I will do our best to maintain that consolidated order of speaking for all members. And so at this time, I'd like to invite and welcome our witnesses from the Department of Agriculture and Agri-Food. We have Lisa Foss, who's the Executive Director. From the Department of Justice, we have Carol Morency, who's the Director General and Senior General Counsel, Criminal Law Policy Section, Policy Sector. We also have Michael Ellison, who's Counsel, Criminal Law Policy Section, Policy Sector. And then also from the Saskatchewan Indian Gaming Authority, we have Zane Hansen, who's the President and Chief Executive Officer. Welcome to all of you. You will have 5 minutes to make your introductory remarks each, and then we'll go into our rounds of questions. We'll start with the Department of Agriculture. Ms. Foss, you have 5 minutes. Go ahead, ma'am.
Great. Thanks very much. Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the committee. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak with you today. So I'm the Executive Director of the Canadian Parimutuel Agency. The Canadian Parimutuel Agency I'll refer to as the CPMA. So that's the quick acronym that you might not be familiar with, but it's CPMA is for the Canadian Parimutuel Agency. So let me start by explaining a little bit about the CPMA. The CPMA is a special operating agency situated within Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada that regulates and supervises parimutuel betting on horse races. The legislative authority was established in the 1920s. The mandate of the CPMA is to ensure that parimutuel betting on horse racing is conducted in a way that is fair to the betting public. So you might not be familiar with the term parimutuel. Very simply, it's a form of betting that is pool-based, where the bettors are competing with each other for a portion of the pool. The winners divide the total of the amount bet, that is to say the pool, in proportion to their bets, less a predetermined percentage for the management of the pools by the racetrack operators, applicable provincial taxes, and the CPMA's federal levy. The CPMA's funding model is set up under the Revolving Funds Act, which means that it does not receive any government funding, but rather its revenue is generated through a 0.8% levy applied against each dollar bet in Canada on horse racing. The total amount bet in Canada on horse racing was $1.2 billion in fiscal 2019, which generated an annual revenue of just over $9 million for the CPMA. The sector and the CPMA rely on these revenues earned from the betting to fund their operations. But during the last decade or so, these funds, the total amount bet in Canada has been declining steadily, and in the last 20 years has dropped by about 27%. With the funds generated through its levy, the CPMA currently monitors parimutuel betting at 31 racetracks and 145 betting theaters betting theaters might be something that you're familiar with at your favorite sports bar. The CPMA has a staff of 31 people. And very quickly, I'm going to highlight sort of the three buckets of things that we do. So firstly, we provide regulatory and approval and oversight over betting on parimutuel horse races. This includes, for example, ensuring accurate calculations of the amounts retained by the racetrack operators and the amount paid out to the winners. We investigate complaints and we audit systems. Number two, we issue betting permits and licenses to Canadian racetracks and their associated betting theaters. And finally, the third point, we deliver the equine drug control or anti-doping program to deter the unauthorized administration of drugs and medication for racehorses. This national program ensures consistency and helps maintain the integrity of the sport. In an average year, the CPMA tests approximately 25,000 samples, blood or urine, and where a drug violation is found, a certificate of positive analysis is issued by the CPMA. It's up to the province to adjudicate and impose penalties on the violation. And for example, that could be a fine or suspension. While the CPMA is focused on betting and equine anti-doping, it's the provincial governments who regulate the sport itself. For example, it's the provinces that assign the race dates, officiate the races with judges and stewards, license the racetracks, owners, trainers, and jockeys. Now, very quickly, I'd like to address the technical elements of Bill C-218 as it relates to horse racing. Bill C-218 is silent on horse racing, which means that if Bill C-218 proceeds as currently drafted, it could be interpreted as permitting the provinces and territories the ability to conduct and manage all forms of betting on horse racing, including parimutuel betting, which is an area that is presently regulated by the federal government through the CPMA. Territories offered and regulated betting on horse racing. It could take customers away from the racetrack operators, who currently are the only entities who are issued betting permits with the CPMA, which of course puts further pressure on the horse racing industry and the revenues base of the CPMA. That's it. I think that's my 5 minutes, but I'd be very happy to answer questions that you may have related to regulating parimutuel betting on horse racing. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. We'll now go to the Department of Justice with Carol Morency and Michael Ellison. You have 5 minutes. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you for your invitation to appear in relation to Bill C-218, an act to amend the Criminal Code sports betting. So I'm pleased to appear before the committee in my capacity as counsel within the Criminal Law Policy section of the Department of Justice. And today I'm joined, as noted, by my colleague, Carol Morency, who's Senior General Counsel and Director General of the Criminal Law Policy section. So I'd like to take this opportunity to offer some brief comments on Bill C-218, the structure of the gaming and betting provisions of the Criminal Code, and to discuss the differences between Bill C-218 and Bill C-13. So Bill C-218 proposes to decriminalize single event sports betting by permitting provinces and territories to offer games or betting products concerning the outcome of a single sporting event, if they choose to do so, as what's called permissible lottery schemes under the Criminal Code. So under Bill C-218, decriminalization would be achieved by repealing a single paragraph within the Criminal Code that currently excludes single event sports betting from the definition of what is a provincial or territorial lottery scheme. So this paragraph, along with the rest of the gaming and betting provisions, are located in Part 7 of the Criminal Code. The general structure of these provisions can be broken down in the following manner. So first, all gaming and betting activities are prohibited by default in Canadian law. From this general prohibition on gaming and betting, we find two carve-outs, or exceptions if you want to call it that, for legal gaming and betting. And so the first carve-out or exception is the federal system of parimutuel betting on horse racing that my colleague from the CPMA just described. So while many aspects of the horse racing industry are indeed regulated by the provinces and the territories, the actual parimutuel system of betting is regulated by the CPMA. And that's, as was just noted, a special operating agency within Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada. And now the second carve out from the general prohibition on gaming and betting is in the form of the provincial and territorial lottery schemes. So this carve-out has been in place since 1969, 1970, and it permits provinces and territories to offer a very broad range of games that involve elements of chance or betting products. And we refer in the criminal code to provinces and territories conducting and managing these lottery schemes. In effect, this is very similar to regulating these lottery schemes. However, in limited circumstances, the provinces and territories may also license other entities to operate lottery schemes. So typically we see this in the form of charitable lotteries. So these charities would be licensed by the provinces and territories. And now that brings us back to Bill C-218. Now, subsection 207 or sub 4 of the criminal code defines permissible lottery schemes. So we find that definition of what is a lottery scheme. And so as long as provincial and territorial authorities regulate gaming products within this definition, they are legal activities. And while the definition is broad, Parliament has maintained certain exclusions to this definition. And these exclusions, in effect, make these specific activities once again subject to the general prohibition and therefore illegal. And the exclusion from the definition of a permissible lottery scheme, that's the subject of Bill C-218, is found in paragraph 207, sub 4, sub B. And now this paragraph prohibits the provinces and territories from offering betting products on single event sporting events. Therefore, by repealing this paragraph, the provinces and territories would be unrestricted in their ability to offer gaming and betting products that they consider appropriate on races, fights, single sport events, or athletic contests. Bill C-13, in contrast, retains some of the language found in this paragraph and introduces the term horse racing. And the effect is that C-13, unlike C-218, would retain the federal role of regulating systems of betting on horse racing across the country. And presently in this paragraph, the terms race and single sport events operate to prohibit PT or provincial and territorial activity in this field. And so given those comments, and I think I've just run out of my 5 minutes, I'd just like to thank you again, Madam Chair, and everybody for the invitation from my colleague and I.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate that. We'll now go to the Saskatchewan Indian Gaming Authority with Zane Hansen for 5 minutes. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning to members of the committee. It's a pleasure to be speaking to you today on the topic of single event sports wagering. My name is Zane Hansen, the President and CEO of Saskatchewan Indian Gaming Authority, or as we call it, SIGA for short. Quick background on our company. SIGA is a casino operator situated in Saskatchewan, and we are owned by the 74 First Nations in our province. About 25 years ago, our First Nations collectively reached an agreement with the province to guide the development of casinos in Saskatchewan. Our purpose for getting into the casino business is not unlike other jurisdictions where we viewed the industry as a means to create employment, support economic development, and raise revenues for our communities. Since the early 90s, the industry certainly has been quite resilient and has delivered very well on expected benefits. From our perspective at SIGA, we've done very well developing 7 regional casino markets. We've created employment through that for over 1,800 individuals, of which 65% or more are of First Nations origin. Supporting on-reserve economic development was very key as well, and that helps build local infrastructure and tax bases for our First Nation communities. And as a nonprofit, we annually return millions of dollars back to our First Nation communities, the provincial government, and our regional charity foundations. So in the context of First Nations development, these benefits have been of critical importance. As we all know, we're not in normal times. COVID-19 has brought our sector to an abrupt halt almost a year ago. And like most casinos across Canada now, our properties are currently closed. At this point, our company faces some mounting losses, and we have now placed about 93% of our employees on various forms of leave. I want to say we're grateful for the wage subsidy program implemented by the federal government. That has been key to our survival through this year. And we also understand, while these impacts are painful, we understand the difficult measures that need to be taken to address this encounter the virus. It's a very difficult situation we all must find our way through. One tool that will help us recover going forward is single event wagering. This is an important piece of legislation to us that will really assist operators across the country. I'd say the gaming industry is no different than other sectors of the economy, where advances in technology and evolving customer preferences drive continuous change. Single event sports wagering is the perfect example of that, as customers prefer it as a more dynamic form of wagering, and it primarily takes place on the relatively newer channels to deliver gaming, which are online and mobile. There's many positions you will hear to support single event wagering. From our view as an operator, I'll just share a few with you. First, we simply want the opportunity to compete and offer a product that our customers like. We currently see, of course, the unregulated gray market conducting business in our province, taking a lot of money out, and there's no benefits back to our stakeholders. You will see across the country, gaming operators are also heavily invested in the industry with big investments. And single event wagering will bring further investment as we go forward, as companies look for ways to enhance the gaming entertainment experience based on sport. To give you an example on that, single event wagering is a perfect opportunity to take a multi-channel view with our customers. We can enhance and modify the food and beverage formats within our casinos, and then complement that with the other channel of online or mobile, where people can bet that way. So this will not only diversify our revenue base, it'll drive reinvestment and employment back into our casinos once legislated. It also protects the interests of our customers. As regulated operators, we make sure our customers are well informed on the games we provide and the integrity of the game is preserved. So as legal operators, we are held to high standards of accountability in areas such as industry regulation, responsible gaming, and processing of financial transactions. So I think it would improve that whole area. So just a few reasons on why we see single event wagering as such an important part of our future as a casino operator. And on behalf of SIGA and our stakeholders here in Saskatchewan, I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak today.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hansen. I appreciate you staying within those 5 minutes and your testimony. Thank you. We'll now go into our first round of questions, starting with Mr. Waugh for 6 minutes. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I want to thank all three groups that have come to the Justice Committee here this morning. And I think I'll start with Ms. Foss. What is the likelihood of provinces permitting wagering on horse racing outside of the parimutuel system that we have today?
That's a good question. So I think the likelihood, if we look at what's happening in other jurisdictions around the world, I think there is an interest in providing fixed odds betting on horse racing. And I don't have a good handle on which provinces would be interested in offering that, but I do know that it's been successful in other jurisdictions. Yeah, I don't know if you're calling witnesses from the provinces to the table, but I think there would be an interest in that. And of course the important thing to kind of recognize is that it's expensive to operate a racetrack, and the infrastructure around putting that together is significant. So if the provinces were to offer fixed odds betting on horse racing without some sort of compensation for that infrastructure that's involved with putting that race together, that's the kind of the difficult thing to get your mind around.
Yeah, you know, the offshore sites now, as you know, are offering racing in Canada, and we're getting nothing from that. Could you comment on that on behalf of the CPMA?
Well, and I guess a couple things here. I want to make it clear that I'm a public servant and I'm a regulator. So what's interesting would be to hear directly from the horse racing industry and seek their views in terms of the dynamics. The important, one of the elements here that's to be mindful of is that the business model for the horse racing sector is founded on gambling dollars. And unlike other sports, their whole business model is in tune with what the dollars are, the gambling dollars that are coming in. In terms of the CPMA, our revenue base is based on total dollars bet in Canada on horse racing. So that's dollars that Canadians are betting on Canadian races, and also dollars that Canadians are betting on foreign races. And that's our 0.8% levy is based on that dollar. However, CPMA does not get any money when you've got an American gambling in New York on a Canadian product.
Which kind of would be Woodbine. It is the biggest in the country. So, no,
Ontario,
thank you very. Yeah, Ontario.
Ontario
right
represents about 70% of the total dollars bet in Canada.
Yeah, I knew that. Thank you, though, for confirming that. Mr. Hansen, thank you for coming to committee today. And, you know, so much has been said about the casinos in Niagara Falls along with Windsor. And I brought you to committee and you accepted because of the Indigenous aspect. This bill, 218, has a broad effect across the country. And you had a very good statement today. You employ up to 1,800 people or more, and 65% of those are Indigenous. And this is the group, I feel, in our province that need hope and opportunities. And with this bill going forward, I think this gives your company and the people of Saskatchewan an opportunity for hope and employment, because coming out of COVID is going to be, as you said, extremely difficult. Could you comment on that?
Yes, thank you, Kevin. Certainly, this has been an impact unlike anything we've ever seen in our business. And definitely having single event wagering as an approved form of gambling to incorporate into our business model will really assist us in rebuilding and going forward. It's going to be a whole new world, getting our customers back into our building and feeling safe and comfortable. That is always paramount for us. So adding this into our product mix and reinvesting and integrating it with our bricks and mortar properties will be very, very important piece. It helps diversify your customer base and it helps diversify your revenue base. And that will help us get our business stronger and create more opportunity for people.
How much money is the province of Saskatchewan and Seagull losing, do you think, with single game betting now on offshore sites, unregulated sites? Give me an estimate, roughly. And I have no idea, but you're in the business, so yeah. What does it mean?
What we've seen in other jurisdictions, there's studies out now at the high end, say in the UK, single event wagering, a common way to gauge broad macro type revenues is spend per adult annually. So in the UK, they are hitting in the neighborhood of $75 per adult every year. More recently in New Jersey, with legalization there, they're in the neighborhood of $50 per adult. And I will say, because sports exists primarily through the online mobile channels, the impact of the COVID has really grown that. So you really take your adults, in Saskatchewan we have about 890,000. You look at $50 to $75 as a potential global amount. And not all of that is new, but you could be $20 to $30 per adult is what we're exactly losing out on right now.
Which is substantial in your communities on reserves and in your communities. Plus, the provincial government gives a lot of money back in culture, in sports and recreation that we're losing out on today because of this unregulated market.
That concludes your time, Mr. Waugh.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hansen. We'll now go to our second questioner, Ms. Elizabeth Briere. You have 6 minutes. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you. Witnesses today. My first question may be to Carole Morancy. For the
benefit of all parliamentarians and my own, could you first explain what is the difference between Paris Mutuel and single sports betting with fixed betting? Thank you for the question. I'll ask my colleague to answer the question.
Thank you very much for the question. So as Ms. Foss had described, parimutuel betting is a form of pool betting. And while I would defer to her on the specifics of the exact operation of parimutuel betting, it is essentially a form of pool betting where all interested bettors on the outcome of a horse race will pool their bets together, and then a levy is taken out of that pool for the operation of the CPMA and to help pay for the horse industry in general, including the race operators. And then the remaining money, depending on the outcome of the race and which horse was bet on, would then be divided up between. So that's the pool-based system. Now, the difference between that and single event sports betting is that essentially there is none. So single event sports betting is legal in Canada in one form, and that is parimutuel betting, because ultimately this parimutuel betting system that's in place, that's regulated by the CPMA, is a form of betting on the outcome of a single sporting event. So while C218 seeks to decriminalize single event sports betting, it does so when we're talking about provincial and territorial powers. And so we would be, or the bill would propose to decriminalize single event sports betting, including betting products and games of chance, however set up by the provinces and territories within their structure of lottery schemes. So just to kind of very quickly, parimutuel betting as it's constructed under the CPMA currently is one form of single event sports betting, but there's no other legal forms of single event sports betting today.
Thank you. Qu'est-ce qui...
And why was it not allowed previously or up to now? And what has changed now that would make us go ahead with the single betting?
Thank you again very much for the question. What I think I can offer in terms of comments is that this section of the criminal code stems originally from Old English law, and back at the time of Confederation, there was a general prohibition on these types of gaming and betting activities, and that was reflected in our first criminal code at the end of the 1800s as well. So that general prohibition has always existed since the beginning of Canada back at Confederation, and so the popular theories as to why it existed would suggest that there were concerns just in general about morality and vice in communities and the morality of gambling. And what I can say in terms of the criminal code is that over the past 150 years, but in particular over the past 100 years, we have seen a slow and incremental decriminalization of various betting products as Parliament has considered it appropriate. So, for example, in and around the Great War, we saw the legalization or the decriminalization of betting on horse racing, which had been occurring in any event, but that was formally recognized, and then the legislative authority was established in the 1920s, as Ms. Foss pointed out. And then again, we saw a major shift in 1969 and 1970 with the decriminalization of lotteries. And that was a decision that Parliament at the time, taking into account obviously a number of factors, considered appropriate. And so now the latest large discussion has been over the past decade over single event sports betting. And there are a number of important influences that the committee should and will be considering and has considered before with private members' bills in the past. Everything from potential match fixing, morality, and other considerations that are completely valid under our consideration of what is criminal law in Canada. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, thank you. À votre avis, est-ce...
In your opinion, would it be legitimate to think that this bill would decrease illegal bidding on the black market now?
Thank you again for your question. I think as a department, my colleague and I can say that it is likely that depending on how the provinces and territories set up their regulated spaces for single event sports betting, that some of that activity that is occurring today would be brought into the regulated sphere. So that it is highly contingent on what the provinces and territories do to set up their regulated spaces under the scheme of lottery schemes. And we certainly can't put a number on the amount or volume of betting that would come into a legal system, but that would be dependent on our colleagues in the provinces and territories who have that expertise in setting up those systems.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Thank you, Ms. Brière. We'll now go to Monsieur Fortin. Monsieur Fortin, voulez-vous commencer pour...
Monsieur Fortin, do you want to start? Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Ellison, I would like to have your opinion about the legal status of games of gambling on reserves. What is the status of those activities on First Nations reserves? And secondly, what effect would have C218 on gambling on reserves and First Nations territories?
Yes, thank you very much for your question. Again, the comments that I can offer here is to describe essentially, again, very quickly, the powers that are authorized under the Criminal Code. So under Canadian law, we have only the two carve-outs for legal betting. You can bet under the parimutuel system on horse racing, or you can bet under an established provincial or territorial lottery scheme. And so under those lottery scheme powers, provinces will directly conduct and manage certain schemes like OLG in Ontario, Lotto Quebec. Those are the established ones that everybody knows about. But then also, in addition to that, provinces can license entities, whether they be charities is one of the most popular, or as we've seen in the last 20 years, agreements can be...
Pardon, je ne veux pas vous interrompre.
I'm sorry, I don't want to cut you off, but we don't have a lot of time. On First Nations territories, you are saying that this gambling doesn't happen, so C218 won't have an effect on First Nation lands any more than it would have in general society, right?
Thank you. And to get to the point as quickly as possible, I know we don't have a lot of time, is that there are agreements in place between provinces and territories and Indigenous peoples. So whether it's an Indigenous nation within the province or as a community or an organization, those agreements can involve Indigenous peoples and it can have a direct effect on them. So for example, the province of Saskatchewan and SIGA have a very comprehensive agreement that's in place that deals with revenue sharing and whatnot. And so C218 can have an impact on Indigenous peoples by affecting those agreements, and the ability of provinces and territories to offer additional products would also allow Indigenous operators to offer additional products as well if there is an agreement in place between them and the province or the territory.
Okay, a second question, Madam Chair, for Mr. Hansen. I would like to know what impact, or rather what programs have been put in place to fight the problems linked with gambling, to his knowledge, in reserves and First Nation lands or territories.
Thank you, Member 14. Yes, we're very mainstream with our responsible gaming programs. If you look at our casinos as an example, all of our properties are members of the RG Check program. So we reach national accreditation on responsible gaming standards. We also are a member of the GameSense programming that originated out of British Columbia with the Lottery Corporation there. You will see in our entity, there's a 100% requirement for employee training on responsible gaming, and we have very thorough programming going forward. So as we look at sports wagering in the online space primarily, we'll take the fundamentals of that program and make sure those are relayed into our customer base that comes in through sports wagering. The advantage you have with sports wagering in an online context is all of your players and your customers are registered. and you can continuously monitor and even put in more controls for responsible gaming that way. Beyond that, all of the operations that we conduct are highly regulated by our regulators here in the province. So as you legislate and legalize single event sports wagering, the standards raise on all fronts.
Okay. Est-ce que
Thank you. In your opinion, Mr. Hansen, presently, are there problems linked with pathological gaming in some families, for instance? Wait, I'm sorry. Do you think that family violence can be heavily influenced by compulsive gamers' disease, if I may say? Does that have an influence on family violence, domestic violence?
je voudrais que vous me parliez du
I would like you to talk about the link between pathological gambling and domestic violence.
I think what you'd be referring to there is probably any form of addiction and what that can cause in other environments. So definitely that is not something we want to see. We take a long-term view of the industry, and we want our players to be well informed and not be participating in ways that cause them harm or their behaviors.
OK. Mais donc, vous n'avez pas de statistiques.
So you don't have any data on the link between pathological gambling and domestic violence. Has this been identified as a problem?
There is considerable data, and you'll have speakers coming up that can speak to the small percentage of society that have addictions concerns that way. Taking it beyond that for what else it may cause, I would not be familiar with any data on that front.
Merci, M. Hansen.
Thank you very much, Monsieur Fortin. We'll now go to Mr. Massey for 6 minutes. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for our witnesses for being here today. Ms. Foss, maybe I can start with you with regards to just making sure I had this correct. The 0.8% levy, is that legislated or is that regulated?
That's, well, Michael can help me out with that one, but that's a legislative number.
Okay.
And it can move in the criminal code. It can allow us to go up to 1%. And we make that change. If we were to make a change from 0.8 up to 1%, we could do that through a regulatory change.
Okay, has that been changed in the past at all? Or I guess I was listening to your numbers, and I'm just wondering, like, how sustainable is the status quo for the department that you run in the industry that's using it? That's what I'm concerned about. Is you mentioned you created in the 1920s, which makes you probably part of the more modern part of this bill. But how sustainable, if you could answer that question?
Is a great question. That's a question that keeps me up at night as well. So we've been on a declining basis, and we are reaching a point where, I would say a tipping point in terms of our funding model. And there's a certain, we've done a number of cost-cutting exercises over the last number of years. And we kind of keep very, the objective of the CPMA is to run a zero balance, if you will, right? Expenses equal revenues each year. And we've been fairly successful at doing that in the last number of years, but increasing that's becoming difficult. About 65% of the budget for CPMA is to deliver the equine drug control program, the anti-doping program. And science is expensive. The testing is expensive. Keeping on top of the science is tough. So we are in a situation where there's tremendous pressure. Absolutely.
Thank you. And maybe I can then move to Mr. Ellison with regards to that. You distinguish the difference between C13 and C218. Can you maybe talk a little bit about, I guess that change there? I had argued to keep both bills going. The speaker ruled that they're the same. What's your kind of reflection on that, if you could provide your professional opinion on that?
For whom was that question, Mr. Massey?
To Mr. Ellison from Justice.
Mr. Ellison?
We might have lost him.
We might have.
Okay, so
maybe there he is.
There he
Go
is.
ahead, Michael.
My apologies. I just dropped out. Could the question be repeated?
Yes, I can. I hope, Madam Chair, I don't lose my time. I'll be real quick to try to catch up. Just with regards to C13 and C218, the speaker ruled that they're the same. And I was just questioning Ms. Foss with regards to the sustainability of her program, but this is the germane part between the two. If you could provide your professional commentary on the differences, the bills, and if we amended it and it still doesn't solve her problem.
Of course, thank you. My apologies again for that. So the main difference is that, of course, Bill C 218 has a complete repeal of the paragraph. Bill C13 would maintain most of the language. It would remove all of the references other than we would insert a reference essentially under that bill to horse racing. So that it completely excludes betting, any system of betting on horse races from provincial and territorial authority. So that would very clearly maintain the longstanding role of the CPMA while opening up all other forms of single event sports betting or betting on athletic contests or fights, anything along that nature for the PTs. And they could regulate any of those products as they see fit. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. It just, the thing is, it doesn't solve Ms. Foss's problem with their situation in terms of the structural discrepancies between continuing to have to drug test in the cars and cost that and the percentage that she can raise to 1.1%, I think, or to 1% from 0.8%. So it doesn't change that, though.
It does not change that, no.
Okay, thank you. If I could move to Mr. Hansen, please. Mr. Hansen, you brought up a really good point that I don't think gets a lot of attention. You also help your clients with processing for financial transactions. I know organized crime does it in a different way for illegal sports betting, but maybe you can talk about the protections you provide for your consumers by that measure, because that's not, I don't think, discussed enough as regards to the abuse and the violence that goes on with the underground black market economy versus that of a regulator that has accountability, and maybe your process for financial transaction help. You can highlight a little bit of that, please.
Yes, thank you. As casino operators, we follow and operate under the guidelines set out through FINTRAC, which basically ensure there's high standards placed around financial transactions. So we have to fill out forms for any transaction over certain dollar thresholds, and people have to verify their source of funds when they're coming to partake on our gaming floors when they bet at certain levels. So by legislating single event, you can then apply those same standards to single event wagering that takes place. And I think that would, vastly improve that area as well.
Yeah, that's a key point, because obviously the Hells Angels and others don't use FINTRAC, whereas you can actually track the financial movement of larger sums of money. Is that correct?
Yes, and with single event wagering, you're primarily in an online and mobile context. Your players all have to be registered with you. So, and then if they have dollar volume activities in their accounts that exceed certain thresholds, there's further due diligence and information that has to be provided on their source of income and source of funds. So it's a much more sound environment.
Thank you, and thank you, Madam Chair.
Thanks very much, Mr. Massey. We'll now go into our second round of questions for 5 minutes, starting with Madame Finley. Please go ahead.
Thank you, and thank you to all of you for being here today. We very much appreciate it. I've only got those 5 minutes, so we'll get into it quickly. This would be for the Justice Department. Can you comment on the prevalence of criminal activities related to single game betting on the black market? And as part of that, is there any data out of the US you can reference where single game sports betting has been legalized? I don't know who wants to go for that.
Thank you very much for the question.
Thank you. I see your tabs are a little rumpled, so you must have been in court recently.
Hey, it's a little embarrassing now that you pointed out, but it's true. I always used to be the one that kept them ironed. But again, thank you for the question. First of all, the link essentially to to organized crime. I think the best resource for the committee is the Criminal Intelligence Service of Canada. They put out a public report on organized crime in Canada, and in particular the 2019 public report, which is just accessible off their website. It draws the link specifically between unregulated gambling activities and organized crime, in particular with motorcycle outlaw groups and other forms of organized crime. So the problem, of course, is that because it's a gray or a black market, it's incredibly difficult to get data on potential dollars flowing or potential betting activity.
And where would you suggest we look for data from the U.S. where it has been legalized that might be of benefit to us?
Of course. So I think one of the best resources is the state of New Jersey. And in fact, the committee members can find, there are, I believe, monthly reports from the ministry, or not the ministry, but the Office of the Attorney General in New Jersey. And since decriminalization in, I believe, 2018, that state was at the forefront of litigation. And so as soon as there was an opportunity to legalize, they did. And they released monthly reports outlining the various revenues coming into the state through betting, including single event sports betting. And you'll also find a number of just news articles referencing those reports, very large amounts of money going to the state of New Jersey. It's on the forefront.
Thank you. This is for Mr. Hansen. I'd first like to thank you for your Game Sense responsible gambling program. I understand it provides education and resources with respect to problem gambling. And it has been said one of the benefits of bringing in legalizing single event sports betting is there would be ability for more revenues, greater protections for people who may be suffering from or susceptible to gambling addictions. I'm wondering if you would consider imposing daily limits to reduce the risk of problem gambling.
Thank you, Member Findlay. Certainly, it's something we can entertain. We often work closely with our provincial counterparts and regulators on those matters. The online nature I mentioned earlier of single event gives you the opportunity to put a number of controls in place that way. For time of play, for the amount that could be wagered at a given time period as well. So definitely those options are there for us. And for us, we always take a long-term view. We have to live in our markets over the long term. So protecting player interests and having a long-term customer base is very important for us.
Thank you. According to their website, Bet365, one of the most popular offshore gambling apps, allows users to deposit up to $50,000 to their account instantly using a credit card. Would you place limits on credit card sports gambling or transaction amounts?
I would definitely anticipate as we start to design the program that we would do that. We have bet limits pretty much on every form of gaming that we provide. And every form of gaming we provide, we fully inform the customers on the odds and the nature of the game that they're playing. So the online activity and sports betting would be no different.
Thank you. I see I'm getting my time and there's not enough time to ask another question. So thank you all for being here. We really do appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madame Findlay. We'll now go to Mr. Maloney for 5 minutes. Go ahead, sir.
Thanks, Madam Chair, and thanks to all of our witnesses. For me, at least, this is a bit like watching an online gambling seminar. I'm learning a lot through this discussion, as I did from our first witness on Tuesday, who did a great presentation too, I should add. Thank you to Mr. Morency for explanation earlier, because I had to admit I was very confused trying to distinguish between single event betting and pari-mutuel betting, because I'm not a big gambler, but the few times I've been out to the racetrack, I go bet on one race at a time and I pick a horse to win or place or show. That much I've able to figure out on my own. So am I correct in understanding that when I do that, that's a form of pari-mutuel betting?
Yes. So just to keep it relatively simple, it is the the only form of legalized betting on horse racing currently in Canada is through the parimutuel system. And there's a bit of confusion, rightfully so, because the term parimutuel is very expansive, and it could encompass a lot of different forms of betting. At the end of the day, it's pool based, and that is what you would do if you're going to the racetrack today. You're betting under the CPMA regime, and it is single event sports betting, or one form of it.
Okay, so how I'm confused then in how allowing single event sports betting on hockey games, football games, etc., impacts on the horse racing industry.
So there are two potential impacts, I suppose. One is that allowing single event sports betting on, let's say, hockey games could still attract the betting audience away from horse racing. That is one possibility. It might be a low possibility, but it is one to consider. And the second is that it doesn't have perhaps a large impact. What the other impact is that provinces and territories, by legalizing single event sports betting in the manner that this bill and Bill C-13 propose, by targeting this paragraph of the Criminal Code, would let provinces and territories set up schemes for any kind of sporting event. So that would also include horse racing. So then, if a province then took action after legalization, they could set up, for example, fixed odds betting on horse racing, or their own parimutuel system on horse racing, or any other kind of form of betting that they can dream of, really. And then that would directly compete with the system that the CPMA runs. Happy to elaborate, but
yeah, you're going to have to, because when I go to Woodbine and I bet on horse X to win a race, isn't that single event betting with fixed odds? Like, my odds aren't locked in when I place that bet? Is that the distinction?
Exactly. So
Okay.
So when you go to Woodbine, it is single event sports betting because it's the outcome of a single race, and it's parimutuel betting, which is pool based, and the odds that you see are not fixed. Those odds will change up until the point that the race starts. So you can place your bet 5 minutes before the race starts, and then the odds will change after you placed your bet. And then once the race starts, then it's essentially locked in. And I defer to Ms. Foss if I missed any of the details there, but that's my understanding of the difference.
I'd like to hear from her too. So your point is then, so if I go place a bet and everybody in the world thinks I know what I'm doing and they all chase my bet, the odds are going to go down. Whereas in single event sport betting, the odds, you're locked in, and that's the fear for the horse racing industry, or my misunderstanding?
No. So if I may, so single event sports betting is betting on the outcome of a single event. So that includes both fixed odds and parimutuel regimes. So right now in Canada, we only have parimutuel. But in other places in the world, for example, Australia, they have both. On horse racing, they have parimutuel betting, and they also have fixed odds betting on horse racing. Under fixed odds in horse racing, which is not legal in Canada, that's when the bettor puts down their money and there's odds established, and they're betting on the outcome of that race, and they know what their payout is going to be because it's locked in. And so if it's 2-1, then you get 2-1 if your horse wins.
So it's fixed odds versus variable floating odds, really, is what it is.
Yeah, and the odds is your payout. It's not the odds of the horse winning.
Yeah, no. Yeah,
does that help?
My limited understanding, I got that part. So my last point is, it's something Ms. Finley mentioned briefly, and I'll get to the point, is the objective here in part is to allow single event sports betting because it takes the bad guys out of the industry. But unless we have unlimited betting amount, it's not going to completely eliminate them, I assume, because they'll still take the single big bets.
Very, very briefly for an answer.
I suppose I can answer that question. We don't have a way under either of the bills that are before the House, C-218 or C-13, to say that all illegal betting would be brought into a legal market.
All right. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Thanks very much. I will now go to Monsieur Fortin for 2.5 minutes. Go ahead, sir.
2.5, OK, ça va être vite,
2.5.
ça. Alors, je voulais dire que
I wanted to say, as my colleague did, I think the more I hear, the more I realize how little I know about sports betting, but that's another issue. Mr. Ellison, could you please tell us If C218 were to pass in its current form, could you tell us, in your view, whether our criminal code and Canadian legislation as a whole would be in a position to deal with match fixing for single events? And if not, what could we do to improve the legislation?
Thank you very much. So currently, the criminal code does have two offenses that are charged in these circumstances for match fixing that is identified. And those typically are cheating at play is one potential one, but more commonly a fraud. So section 380 sub 1 of the code. And now those have been successfully prosecuted, including recently a case that went to the Supreme Court in 2015, the Queen and Reesbury. And so we do have offenses in the criminal code that can combat this activity. Of course, there are other issues to do with detection.
Est-ce que c'est suffisant ou si on pourrait améliorer?
Is that enough, or are there other things we can do to improve these measures?
At this time, my comment would be that the Supreme Court has ruled that these offenses are applicable, but I would say that the committee could look to other jurisdictions and also measures at the UN where there are calls and at other international organizations for specific offenses.
Êtes-vous confiant que dans l'éventualité où C218 est adopté?
If C218 were passed, are you confident that we can eliminate match fixing in Canada?
I think it would be fair to say that match fixing already occurs. It would still occur after, and that the provinces and territories and the prosecution services and investigation services would have to focus on learning more about match fixing and preventing it. And it would be impossible, like all crime, to completely eliminate it.
Donc, je comprends qu'on devrait améliorer si on veut aller vers empêcher.
But it would be an improvement. C218 would be an improvement. And the criminal code would need to be improved.
Encore une fois, je m'excuse, mais vous comprenez.
Madam Chair, it's very difficult for the witness to answer very quickly within a reasonable period because the interpreters have to finish their sentence. So the witness should have a little more time to answer, Madam Chair. With simultaneous interpretation, it can take a bit longer. My Anglophone colleagues, when they have French-speaking witnesses, have exactly the same problem. But since most witnesses are Anglophone, that happens less often.
Thank you for that intervention, Monsieur Fortin. We'll definitely take it into advisement. For now, we'll go to Mr. Massey for 2.5 minutes. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And back to Mr. Ellison, real quickly. Generally speaking, when we move things from the black market to a regulated market, there is a reduction, though, in crime and criminal activity. Is that not a fair statement with regards to when we've actually moved to regulatory practices in these matters?
Thank you for the question. I would say that we've seen it in recent examples with the criminal code, and there are certainly arguments to be made, and data is still being generated in those examples to see. I think it's generally a fair statement to say, yes, people are going to be attracted to a system that is regulated by the provincial and territorial governments. But most importantly, I think on this point, what I would say is that the provinces and territories, it's not just about regulation and setting standards, it's also about integrating police forces as well, monitoring betting activity, and that can be done within a regulated sphere, and that will have a good impact.
And we'll also divert then resources, if we want to taxation models to support those objectives, and as well too, it will take money sources away from those organized elements that receive those funds currently right now.
I think it's fair to say, as a general statement, the criminal Intelligence Service Canada, makes that link. Establishing a system, moving some of that betting activity will cut funding to organized crime to some extent. And then ultimately, like we see with the CPMA now, integrated investigators at the PT level will assist in crime detection.
Thank you. And real quickly to Mr. Hansen, I only have about 45 seconds. Do you think right now your customers are also, that you're coming in to have a relationship with, are they also using these online services that are in the gray market or black market area right now? I know that they are in my area. Are they doing that with your customer base as well too right now?
Definitely the potential is there. What we understand from other jurisdictions is the sports betting customer will be primarily a new customer beyond the reach of what casino customers are now. But I will say, generally, if people have a legal option versus illegal, they will gravitate towards the legal. We see the advent of provincial, say, online organizations, say as BC with their offering, they now have majority market share. So your customers do gravitate towards legal offerings, and legislating something, then you can regulate it. And industry can put their regulations around it, and it'll vastly improve the integrity of the product being offered.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thanks very much. So at this time, I'll thank our witnesses. Je vous remercie pour votre...
I would like to thank you for being here, for your involvement in our committee hearing.
Our next witnesses, thank you again. order. Before we get started, I'll remind our members and then also let our witnesses know that when you are speaking, please do wait until you're recognized and unmute yourself before speaking, and then when you are not speaking to please be on mute, and to speak slowly and clearly for interpretation purposes, as we want to make sure that everybody understands. For your interpretation, just select the language that you would like to listen to. You can speak in any language that you so choose. So at this time, I'd like to welcome our witnesses from the Canadian Gaming Association. We have Paul Burns, who is the President and Chief Executive Officer. From the Responsible Gambling Council, we have Shelley White, Chief Executive Officer. So wonderful to see you again, Shelley. And also Tracy Parker, Director, Standards and Accreditation. And then from Unifor, we have Jerry Diaz, National President, and Mark Holland, who is the National Representative. You will all have 5 minutes each to speak. I have a 1-minute card and a 30-second card, which I will be using as I count your time. We'll start with the Canadian Gaming Association. Mr. Burns, you have 5 minutes. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today. I want to thank the members of Parliament for your leadership over the past year. During these very difficult times, your efforts to support individuals and businesses are welcome and to be commended. The Canadian Gaming Association is a national trade association representing gaming facility operators, manufacturers of gaming technology and equipment, and a wide array of suppliers of goods and services to Canada's gaming industry. With over $17 billion in annual revenue, Canada's gaming industry is present in every region of the country. Just over 100 MPs have major gaming facilities in their communities. Our industry supports over 180,000 jobs across Canada, contributing almost $19 billion in value-added GDP. We purchase over $14.5 billion annually in goods and services, and much of that comes from the communities in which we operate. Our industry, like so many others, has been severely impacted by the pandemic. Many of our facilities have not reopened since last March, or when permitted to open, have done so with very limited capacity. Many of the 90,000 frontline employees have not been able to come to work this past year, creating significant and devastating impacts for families and communities. This is one of the reasons why our industry continues to pursue the proposed amendment to the Criminal Code that you are studying. As we look towards recovery, having the ability to offer single event sports wagering when we are able to reopen safely will be a tremendous benefit to Canadian gaming operators and their employees. While we have been closed, respecting the directives from our local public health authorities, offshore online sports books and bookmaking operations run by organized crime have continued to operate. Annually, Canadians place over $4 billion in wagers with offshore online sports books and approximately $10 billion through illegal bookmaking operations run by organized crime. It's time to level the playing field. It's time to give Canadian gaming operators the opportunity to offer the same product in a legal, licensed, and highly regulated environment and see the benefits flow back to our communities and to the public good. Our industry, alongside provincial government partners, have been requesting this amendment for over a decade. As you will learn through these hearings, the amendment is supported by business and labor organizations, law enforcement professionals, professional and amateur sports organizations, municipalities, and responsible gaming organizations. It's time to get it done. In 1985, the federal and provincial governments agreed that the provinces would have an exclusive right to operate and regulate gaming within their jurisdictions. Over the past 30 plus years, provincial governments have worked to create a safe, highly regulated gaming environment. We've developed and implemented world-class responsible gaming programs that allow Canadian operators to deliver high-quality gaming experiences in safe and secure environments. It is the provinces, through their provincial gaming regulators, who will work to ensure sports wagering is delivered with the proper level of controls and oversight. And this will include things like age and identity verification to ensure minors cannot participate, information and data sharing agreements between sports organizations, sportsbook operators, gaming regulators, and law enforcement to protect the integrity of matches and prevent match fixing. Prohibition on things with players, coaches, and officials from wagering on sports. Standards for advertising and marketing. And access to obviously responsible gaming tools and self-exclusion operators for players. It is only through the regulation of this activity that we can bring it out of the shadows where it currently operates and into the light where we can ensure that the proper player protection are available and enforced. This is too the only way that Canadian technology companies like Toronto-based sportsbook operator The Score, or Vancouver-based technology gaming developer Fans Unite, or Halifax-based sports statistic data provider Covers Media can grow their businesses. These are companies based in Canada, provide goods and services on a global customer base. They are innovators, creating high-value jobs. If Canada continues to criminalize single event wagering, the appetite to continue to drive innovation for companies like these may not be there. Provinces need to be allowed to give consumers more and better choice where they're betting. And obviously, I'd like to see homegrown companies like the ones I just mentioned be able to thrive in their home markets. In closing, the sentiments by all stakeholders is that this legislation is long overdue. Only by regulating single sports betting can we be sure that players are protected, that funds are returned to the provinces in which they're generated, and the Canadian businesses have an opportunity to grow and renew their revenue streams. So thank you for having me.
Thank you very much, Mr. Burns. I appreciate you staying within those 5 minutes. That's wonderful. We'll now go to the Responsible Gaming Council with Shelley White, who's the Chief Executive Officer, and Tracy Parker. Please go ahead. You have 5 minutes.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the Standing Committee of Justice and Human Rights. Thank you for inviting the Responsible Gambling Council to share our perspective on Bill C-218. RGC is a respected Canadian not-for-profit organization whose mission is to prevent problem gambling and reduce its impact. Canada is considered a leader in responsible gambling, and we're proud to be part of this discussion on the legalization of sports betting. Our position on gambling is neutral. Gambling is a legal activity in Canada, and as such, we exist to ensure safeguards are in place to minimize the risks associated with gambling. For over 35 years, RGC has worked closely with regulators and operators to provide strategic guidance, research, accreditation, and work with the public to deliver education and information so they can make informed decisions about gambling. We are gratified by our work and how it influences a safer gambling industry. For instance, we prepared the Responsible Gambling Canada Review for Paul Burns and the Canadian Gaming Association that Mr. Waugh referred to on Tuesday. For over the last few years, sports betting has grown in popularity, and with it, the body of evidence to suggest who's gambling, the issues associated with sports betting, and how to support a safer sports betting industry. According to the 2018 Canadian Community Health Survey, sports betting prevalence in Canada is 7.9%, with Alberta and Manitoba showing the highest proportion of participation. According to a survey that RGC conducted in August 2020 with Ontarians, we asked about their participation in live online sports betting with a bookmaker. 62% of males responded that they had participated. 34% of respondents had recently lost employment or reduced hours of employment. 13% screened with severe anxiety, 47% positively screened for problem gambling. Over 1 in 10 intend to gamble online post-COVID-19, and 5% intend to increase their online gambling when more options are available in Ontario. And while this study was about gambling during COVID-19, we know that the impacts from the pandemic will be long-lasting, and this study clearly underscores the importance of prevention safeguards as a priority, as governments seek to provide broader exposure to gambling. While gambling has existed in Canada for many years, it's important to take note of how sports betting differs from other sports of gambling. Sports betting ties gambling to a favorite pastime enjoyed by millions of Canadians. This association normalizes the gambling activity. Added to this, sports betting has the added complexity of emotion tied into the gambling experience. The emotion associated with the heat of the moment gameplay can make informed decision-making about money and time spent playing more difficult. It is with these people in mind that we speak to you today. RGC believes it's in the best interest of Canadians and Canadian society as a whole that Bill C-218 should be passed. It is with this evidence and Canadians' best interest in mind, RGC recommends the following to the committee. The legalization of single-event sports betting includes a robust regulatory framework that requires provincial regulators and operators to prioritize and integrate consumer protection within their strategy, including adherence and accountability to the highest standard of responsible gambling. And secondly, the federal government continues to champion the prevention of addictions and preservation of individuals' mental health and well-being in accordance with Canada's Mental Health Commission strategy. This can be achieved by prioritizing consumer safety and supporting provincial authorities to develop comprehensive responsible gambling strategies, as well as build their capacity to support individuals and their communities when they introduce legalized sports betting. The good news is that we don't need to recreate the wheel. Most of the standards already exist and are in place in land-based gambling, and we also have the benefit of lessons learned from other jurisdictions. In closing, Madam Chair and members of the Standing Committee, it is RGC's neutral and independent stance that we recommend Bill C-218 should be passed. This is a unique opportunity to bring together stakeholders from health, mental health, education, financial services, and the policing sectors with the gambling industry to create a made-in-Canada responsible gambling culture comprised of evidence-informed regulations and leading practices. We have the opportunities to learn from other jurisdictions who've come before us and apply the highest level of safeguards. This thoughtful and intentional approach will demonstrate Canada's commitment to prosperity as well as the health and well-being of Canadians and society. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Ms. White. I appreciate that. We'll now go to Unifor with Jerry Diaz and Mark Holland for 5 minutes. Go ahead.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair and members of the Standing Committee. It is a pleasure to have been invited to speak to you here today. My name is Jerry Diaz, and I'm the National President of Unifor, which is Canada's largest private sector union. Unifor represents 315,000 members across nearly all major sectors of the economy, from coast to coast, including approximately 11,000 gaming workers across the country. We have members working at the Park Casino in Vancouver, for Manitoba Lotteries, and at Caesar Windsor and Casino Rama, just to name a few. It is on their behalf that I am speaking today when I share Unifor's support for Bill C-218, the Safe and Regulated Sports Betting Act. We believe the federal government should act now to permit single-game sports betting, so this gaming activity can be regulated, and so our federal and provincial laws and regulations support safe and responsible gaming policy. Unifor has been advocating for this legislation of single-game sports betting for several years, because we know firsthand that responsible gaming must take place in a professional, properly regulated, and fairly taxed environment. Our members and elected leaders like Dave Cassidy, president of Local 444 in Windsor, Ontario, have been strong and vocal advocates for this legislative change. Local 444 represents 2,300 members working at Caesars Windsor. In addition, Unifor's Hospitality and Gaming Sector Council, a leadership group elected by and representing 22,000 workers in the hospitality and gaming sector, has endorsed the legislation and regulation of single-game sports betting. Our workers and leaders in the sector know that regulated gaming supports our communities through good unionized jobs, provides business for the broader tourism and hospitality sector, and drives much-needed revenue streams for local, provincial, and federal governments. For many years, some of the biggest opponents to single-game sports betting were the professional sports leagues themselves. However, over time, technology has changed, regulation and enforcement have changed, and public sentiment has changed. Reflecting the shifting, evolving understanding of responsible gaming, many professional sports leagues have revised their position. In June 2020, the NBA, the National Hockey League, Major League Baseball, Major League Soccer, and the CFL issued a joint statement supporting the legalization of single-game sports betting in Canada. These leagues recognize the same fundamental truth our members and local leaders do, and that is this. Single-game sports betting already takes place in Canada every day, but right now it is illegal, illicit, unregulated, and unmonitored. By now, you've probably heard, which you have, that sports betting in Canada is a $14 billion a year business, and that only about $500 million of that is spent on legal provincial sports betting. The other $13.5 billion is spent through offshore organizations and illegal bookmaking operations. In other words, in reality, Bill C-218 isn't about bringing single-game sports betting to Canada. It's about creating a legal framework that will establish a legal and regulated and sports betting market in Canada which would in turn increase consumers' protections, help support responsible gaming measures, and protect the integrity of the sports themselves. It goes without saying that revenues generated in illicit, illegal, underground, black market gaming operations does nothing to contribute to good jobs for workers in Canada. This money is siphoned off into the pockets of offshore operators and organized crime. On the other hand, by creating a legal and regulated market for single game sports betting in Canada, we could help protect thousands of good unionized jobs and gaming locations across the country and potentially create many more. As you witnessed just last week, Bill C-218 received overwhelming support at second reading, with 303 members voting in favor. For our members working in the gaming sector, their families and their communities, this show of support is great news. I'd like to close by reiterating Unifor's support for Bill C-218. It's time to bring legal and regulated single game sports betting to Canada. Thanks very much, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Diaz. We will now go into our rounds of questions. For the first round, for 6 minutes each, we'll start with Mr. Lewis. Please go ahead, sir.
Well, thank you very much, Madam Chair. I appreciate the opportunity. Thanks to each and every witness for presenting today some really fantastic testimony, as always. My first question will be for Mr. Burns. So through you to Mr. Burns, please, Madam Chair. Sir, you spoke about 80 to 90,000 jobs within the gaming industry. And I'm just, as you're very well aware, Michigan and New York already have single sports betting, and Canada is losing out basically daily, both economically and financially. Do you have any idea with regard to the economic side? You had mentioned about two businesses making an app of some type. Any idea economically what impact this will have for Canada?
There have been a great deal of estimates about the size of where this market will grow to. Deloitte's recently released a report that said within 5 years, the sports gaming market could see $28 billion in gross wagering annually. The impacts ability is the previous witness, Mr. Hansen from SIGA, spoke to, and Mr. Diaz has spoken about the impact on jobs and communities. They're being able to bring people into gaming facilities, enhanced food and beverage offering, expanded entertainment choices and events around that. This is where the industry sees the ability to see jobs created and see those impacts. Because right now, single sports wagering is not really leaving any economic benefit for the good in Canada. It's not paying salaries. It's not going to government revenues, which a lot of the gaming revenue does. And so it's a tremendous being able to turn this inward. I spoke about 3 businesses, for example, and this is the other side. There are companies that provide goods and services and technology in the gaming, sports betting sector and gaming sector that can thrive for this. So it's the reach is wide and it's diverse. And it's the opportunity to participate legally in giving people the legal options in Canada is extremely important to see some of these benefits occur. So as the market grows, there will be significant benefits back to communities through jobs and employment, companies servicing the sports betting sector, beyond even marketing partnerships, broadcasters. There's lots of opportunity for revenue and that economic impact to be felt right across the country.
Thank you, Mr. Burns. Madam Chair, through you to Mr. Dias. So in building up of what you had said, sir, about the 2,300 workers at Caesars Windsor, what would happen to Unifor gaming sector workers if this bill doesn't pass?
Well, first of all, it has to pass because all it'll do is put us at a greater competitive disadvantage with the U.S.-based casinos. So I take a look at Fallsview, for example. Take a look at Casino Windsor. We are estimating that just in those 2 casinos alone, single sports betting will require an additional 250 jobs. 250 jobs. We're expecting that at Casino Windsor, it'll generate anywhere between $18 to $24 million in profits, and for Fallsview, anywhere between $9 and $12 million. So this is significant. But I think the key point, and I think we all realize this, Canadians are gambling. It's $14 billion a year we're spending. And if we're not going to spend it in Canada, we're going to spend it abroad. And it isn't any more complicated than that. And I thank you very much for your question.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Dyson. But right back to you through our chair, of course. So when you spoke about the new 250 jobs potentially for Caesars Windsor, are these low-wage service jobs, or can you explain as to what this really brings to the table, what it brings for Essex Windsor?
Well, I bargained much better agreements than that. The reality is that the gaming sector, our members in the gaming sector are very well paid. These aren't your typical service jobs. These are very densely unionized jobs, and the pay is significant. I mean, these are good paying middle class, working class jobs. So it will definitely have a major impact on the economy in Windsor.
Okay, great. Thank you. And again, through you, Madam Chair, to Mr. Dias again, wouldn't passing Bill C-18 represent an expansion of gaming in this country? So is that in essence not really what we're voting for?
But look, we're legalizing what's already done. Like, if you don't pass the legislation, people will continue to go offshore, which is going to have a negative impact on Canadian jobs. So why wouldn't the government want to extract a net benefit from this? Why wouldn't we want to control it in a safe, regulated environment? And so this is about creating good jobs for the communities. It's about a decent revenue stream for municipal, provincial, and federal governments. And like I said, it's going to be done in a safe environment. I think it's a winner all the way around for Canadians.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I see I've only got 30 seconds. I just wanted to say thank you to all the witnesses. And I really enjoyed, Mr. Dias, when you had mentioned about how it's going to kind of explode in a good way tourism in our area as well if we can get this passed. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lewis. I will now go to Mr. Sarai for 6 minutes. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to all the witnesses. It's rare to have a bill where you have unions, the industry, and those that are protecting vulnerable Canadians all agreeing that this legislation should pass. So that's a good sign that this is about time and it should happen. My first question is also through you to the chair to Mr. Dias. I have many family members that are uniform members and a lot of constituents, so very proud of the work you do and making sure their employment and their contracts are well done and they got good middle class family jobs. I'd like to know, you've kind of answered in terms of Windsor, but what's your estimate in terms of across Canada, particularly British Columbia, the estimates for additional jobs in this sector?
We are estimating that as a minimum, it'll create at least 2,000 jobs across the country. And BC has several casinos of which we have organized. So I can't put an exact number, but I would expect you're probably looking at a good 500 plus jobs in BC as a result of this change.
Thank you.
And thank you very much, by the way, for your comments.
Appreciate it. My next question is to Ms. White from Responsible Gambling. The only thing conservative about me is how I gamble. So I would like to know how you're going to prevent addictions. How would you, and what tools would you need that might be more specific towards single event betting that you might need to make sure people don't get in a habit of addiction or losing their livelihoods over this?
Thank you very much, Mr. Sarai, for your terrific question. So like other forms of gambling, we would highly recommend that there's responsible gambling standards built into regulation to provide guidance to the operators in terms of how to incorporate a responsible gambling culture and strategy in their operations. And secondly, we would recommend that each regulator, provincial authority, put in place a responsible internet gambling fund, incorporating this into the revenue model so that a small portion, it doesn't, approximately 2% is dedicated to responsible gambling protocols such as prevention strategies, treatment, secondary treatment, as well as ongoing research, measurement, and evaluation. and ultimately taking a public health approach to this in which all the stakeholders are engaged. This is a complex issue. We need to have healthcare, mental health, financial services, education, policing, as well as responsible gambling industry at the table together, developing a strategy that's going to be effective for players as well as the community, as well as for the regulators and operators. Health promotion, I have to say that prevention is paramount. And, this is the most effective and least costly measure to implement. And providing young people, young adults, males, individuals from ethnocultural communities and seniors with information about how they can gamble safely so that it is an enjoyable experience for them, an entertaining experience, and it doesn't create any harms for them. Ultimately, prevention is the highest priority in terms of this. So those would be, just at a very, very high level of what we'd recommend in terms of protecting consumers.
And I think preventing young people is probably key, especially young males who might get in a habit of betting on sports at an early age. But if they know it's a recreational thing as opposed to a money-making scheme, it might be a better thing. I'm sorry to cut you off. I'm going to ask Mr. Burns, respective of my time. Money laundering in BC has been a big issue, especially in money laundering in casinos. It's been a concern for British Columbians. And I want to know, would single sport betting be vulnerable to the same? Would that be a concern for British Columbian gamers?
It's more of a concern now because it's not legalized, and organized crime is using it quite regularly to actually use it as a money laundering tool, and that's why bringing it into a regulated environment. The recent discussions around the suggestion of money laundering in casinos in British Columbia, a lot of it has had to do with there's a lot of detection of in our casinos file reports to FINTRAC. We have monitored players. We have banned players in British Columbia from using it. We saw the influx of cash that came over a period of time about 5 years ago. The industry responded. The industry changed its policies. It learned as it saw this influx of cash. And in fact, it probably wasn't so much money laundering occurring, but using the proceeds of crime for bad people to come and play in casinos in some respects is what's really come out. And the need to take away sources of funds from organized crime is very important in this. And that's where the Criminal Intelligence Service of Canada report from 2019 stated just that organized crime is active in this space. They use online sites, they use in-person bookmaking operations today to launder money. Taking this channel away from them is very important and bringing it in where there is oversight, where we are working with FINTRAC and law enforcement and gaming regulators to ensure that there's a safe marketplace.
So you're saying,
Sorry,
thank you,
Mr.
Madam Chair.
We'll now go to Monsieur Fortin pour votre 6 minutes. Go ahead, sir.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a question for Mr. Burns. Mr. Burns, we know that at the moment, Canadians need to go on websites or go abroad, for example, in different states in the United States where there is sports betting. If we adopt C 2018, there could be betting on sports in Canada. My question is the following. This would allow money in Canada on this type of betting, but what is your opinion on the impact it could have on foreign monies that could be invested in casinos or other places here in Canada because a single event betting would be allowed?
Environment in Canada. So for someone to participate in the gaming industry, they need to be licensed. So to have ownership, to have certain key jobs in casinos, you're required to go through a very thorough background investigation. Not just anyone can participate in the gaming industry. It's a very privileged industry. So in terms of bad players coming in.
Je crois que je me suis mal exprimé, Monsieur Burns. Pardonnez-moi. On n'a pas beaucoup.
I think I wasn't clear. My question was, do you think there will be an impact in the money coming in from the States, France, or elsewhere, people who would come and bet in Quebec, in Canada, if we adopted C218?
One of the last countries in the world to consider actually moving in this direction. Regulated sports betting has been operated for dozens and decades in Europe. It's now in the United States. It's in South America. We are one of the last countries actually to move to regulate sports betting in the fashion we're proposing here.
OK, donc si je comprends bien, l'apport de revenus additionnels.
So if I understand, the additional revenue influx would come from Canadian bettors.
Come from repatriating some of that money from the legal sources. Sports wagering is growing in popularity because of technology, and it has been on an upswing in a number of years. So yes, it would bring that money back into the legal channels.
Ma deuxième question serait par rapport au trucage.
My next question is on fixing. Many experts fear that if we legalize single event sports betting, there would be fixing, which is easier to do than to change results of different events. What should be done, according to you, to better deal with this problem of fixing?
Match fixing does occur, and and through regulated environments, you've been able to put eyes on sports. Every major professional league has monitoring activities, whether they use services in monitoring players. They prohibit players, coaches, and officials from wagering. There are organizations like the International Center for Sports Security that works on athlete education, on monitoring, working with sports books and law enforcement, monitoring betting lines, looking for unusual patterns. All of this occurs within a legal regulated framework, and being able to put eyes on sport today is very important. And that's why major sports organizations like the International Olympic Committee, FIFA, others have all said we need regulated sports environments so we can watch for match fixing. We have greater eyes, and greater player education is really the key on this. Educating athletes, understanding how to deal with people who may approach you to fix a match. And those are all important pieces of this. The Center for Sports Ethics in Sports in Canada is a body that looks after doping requirements. They see educating players, athletes on sports wagering as a very important part of their mandate that they'd like to take on. So there's lots of activity going on with this. And that's why I say, actually, Canada is very late to the party in terms of the global movement to look at regulated sports wagering.
Diriez-vous que notre réglementation actuelle au Canada est...
Would you say that our current regulations in Canada are sufficient to control the problem of fixing?
Are looking at this very seriously and enhancing those regulations. As I mentioned in my remarks, they'll look at requiring data sharing information. They will look at prohibiting athletes and coaches and officials from betting on sports, but they will also work with other bodies to make sure that there's a robust framework to educate players, to educate law enforcement so they know what to look for. And so as we go through this, I think we're going to see that the attention brought to this brings it out of the shadows, as I call it, and into the light so we can protect people. Greater consumer and athlete protection is extremely important. No one wants to see a match fix. It doesn't work for the sports book operators. It doesn't work for sports. And it's something we all fight hard to want to stamp out.
Diriez-vous que ça arrive présentement?
Would you say that right now there is match fixing, even if it's not for single event betting?
In this country, there's only been one attempt at match fixing that occurred, and that was through the previous Canadian Soccer League, which is a very amateur level league that somehow sportsbooks in Europe thought was equivalent to the English Premier League, which it wasn't. And they were actually trying to fix matches in Canada, but none of the bets were being placed here. They were being placed in Europe and Asia and other places. It is a global problem. That's where Interpol has a whole unit dedicated to chasing match fixers around the world. There are lots of activity going on, but it can occur. But those discussions, unless you're watching, no one knows what's going on, and that's why we need people to watch.
Merci
Thank
beaucoup.
you. Monsieur Fortin, just
Thank you.
it's 30 seconds extra there to finish your time.
Thank you so much, Mrs.
We'll now
Chair.
go to Mr. Massey for 6 minutes. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair. To Ms. White, you're right. Prevention is a huge issue, and when we started this 10 years ago, if you did a conservative estimate of 12 billion in illegal offshore black market and illegal, you're up to 120 billion dollars. If this doesn't pass this time, do you think that there's actually a responsibility for the federal government to help provide more resources for addiction gaming? Because when I started this 10 years ago, it was with a BlackBerry, and now we have our phones and everything else that we can now do this type of activity, and it's really escalated, and we know what's happening. So if we don't pass this in Parliament right now and provide no tools or resources through a regulated market, do you think there's a responsibility for the government to act to make up the shortfall because people are doing this activity?
Thank you very much for your question, Mr. Massey. You know, as the gambling industry grows and diversifies, certainly there are more opportunities for people to gamble. And so I think that the federal government leveraging its role with the Canada's Mental Health Commission and utilizing that to bring together the provinces to look at ways that additional resources and infrastructure can be created in each province to provide more information and better support would be extremely beneficial.
Okay, thank you for that. Go quickly to Mr. Dias. With regards to your operations, not only just, you know, I'm very familiar with the one in Windsor here, obviously, with David Cassidy, Dana Dupuy, and others. Can you maybe describe a little bit about the work ethic that's going on there? We have, people are maybe not be familiar with billions of dollars of infrastructure here that we have to compete now unfairly with the United States with their products and services they have. But despite that, the level of professionalism that we have here, can you speak to that and also to the workforce and what they contribute back to the community? So there's not only just their wages and their donations to United Way and charitable things, but also the supply system going to the service industry for operations like that and the significance of them.
Well, there's no question that we are at a significant disadvantage to gaming workers in the United States, and I will argue because of this. If you look historically, especially with the Canadian dollar right now hovering in the high 70s, 80 cents, and of course, we're living in a pandemic, but pre-pandemic, it was not unusual for on weekends to have casino Windsor full of American workers. But now, of course, the U.S. casinos have all moved to legalize single sports betting, and that's having a huge impact. Now, even though we are in some circumstances at a disadvantage, you'll see that our members at Casino Windsor continue to win all of the awards within the Caesars chain. So we have an incredibly highly skilled workforce. Now, I think one of the things that I'm most proud of in the community of Windsor is what our members contribute to the United Way campaign, to women's shelters, food banks, the Herb Fund. And our members that work at Casino Windsor are right at the forefront of all of that, as is our local 444. So we are an integral part of the community. And of course, our wages play a major role in creating a vibrant community in Windsor and Essex County.
And during the COVID right now experience, I know that Kevin Lafayette and David Cassidy, they've expressed that even if with this legislation passed, there could even be some micro jobs created, like maybe 50 or so workers to actually start their process of renovations, preparation, and even some services provided whatever happens with the provincial rollout. Is that something your members are prepared to do, is to continue to deal with the current situation, but also find ways to get back to work right away?
Who's that question for, Mr. Massey?
To Mr. Dias, I think we might. I might be having problems.
We might have lost
with
him there. He's kind of frozen there on the screen.
Yeah. Okay, so I'll go to Mr. Burns then. To Mr. Burns, with regards to international competition that's taking place right now, you've mentioned Canada really is a laggard with regards to this. Do you think that we could leverage, though, other international bodies to help deal with not only problem gaming, match fixing, all those different things, and Interpol and so forth? Do you think we can actually tap into some of those expertise to help us as well here? That's one of the things I think we could actually use to our advantage, but I'll leave it to you to comment.
There are many avenues. There is a international treaty called the Macklin Treaty that was created actually with some Canadian input a number of years ago that Canada has not signed, and it was really to deal with fighting match manipulation. The International Olympic Committee has started over a decade ago making this as one of their key pillars, is when they fought cheating at play, match fixing, doping, all within the same integrity of sport envelope. And they've worked with international sports bodies. So now in all of the major international sports bodies, like the International Hockey Federation, all have training programs and monitoring programs for athletes on match fixing and education. I sat in a conference that the Canadian Centre for Ethics in Sports held 2 Aprils ago, and there were 70 sports bodies in that room representing Canadian athletes who said, yeah, we need to make sure that we can have greater protection for athletes and greater education programs. And that's something that Sport Canada, I think, needs to take and make a priority as we move forward, because it works in partnership. There's many people that participate in the process to ensure integrity of sport. It's gaming regulators, sportsbook operators, law enforcement, athletic bodies, teams, players. Everybody has a role to play, and that's where there's a number of international organizations where this is a priority, and that's where we work.
Thank you, Mr. Burns. Thank you, Mr. Massey. We'll now go to our second round of questions, starting with Mr. Cooper for 5 minutes. Go ahead, sir.
Great. Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to our witnesses. I'm going to direct my first question to Ms. White or Ms. Parker, or whoever wishes to answer. Ms. White, you mentioned accreditation. And I was just interested in what type of accreditation work the RGC does, why is it important, and what value does it provide to regulators and operators?
Thank you for the question. I'll take that one. As Director of Standards and Accreditation at RGC. I oversee our accreditation program called RG Check, that is defined accreditation program for both land-based and online operators globally. So we operate in many Canadian jurisdictions, but also in international groups as well. I'd say the key benefits come from providing a really defined way to measure the intentions and commitments that operators and regulators have. You hear a lot about, commitments to responsible gambling, how important it is. What an accreditation program like RG Check does is actually measure whether that's happening on the gaming floor through the player platform. We survey players, we survey employees to find out how the programs are operating and if they're operating as intended. The program is comprehensive in terms of it looks at employee training on responsible gambling, access to money standards. It includes how the games are selected, the information that's provided to players, the self-exclusion programs, the access to support and help that players get if they need it. So it is a very broad, comprehensive. It looks at standards at the cash and cage. It looks at standards of security. It looks at how all of the roles within the casino or with the platform operate in, with the intention of responsible gambling.
Great, thank you. That's very helpful. Again, I'll proceed to ask either Ms. Parker or Ms. White. It was the first recommendation of RGC that focused on prioritizing and integrating consumer protection in their strategy with respect to provincial regulators. So could you talk a little bit about what that would look like?
I see it as a continuation of, thank you for the question, because as Shelley has mentioned and as we've discussed, that there are, a lot of gambling channels already already open to Canadians, that are enjoyed by many, and building on opening the market to sports will create a different line of business with different unique considerations, a new demographic potentially, new information. And so building on the regulators and the provincial efforts around prevention and mitigation that are currently taking place, being able to customize the information for sports bettors, and whether it's, you know, the illusion of control with sports betting that's higher, whether it's we'll see with sports betting, the opportunity to induce to gamble through promotions and in-game betting, celebrity sponsorships. There'll be a new sort of angle to betting that players will be exposed to with this passing that can be managed as an expansion of the current provincial efforts.
And I'll just turn it over to Mr. Burns. You talked about the fact that gaming in Canada is highly regulated. In the context of single event sports betting, how can we ensure that each provincial authority does have robust regulations and each operator has high quality responsible gambling standards in place? I would take it a lot of it is already there, and I think you alluded to that.
Yes, there are. It is a highly regulated industry. It's a very with a high level of controls and operations. So it already comes with that part of the DNA, let's just say, for lack of a better word. But when you look at what provincial regulators will look to, and it's a combination of some of the things that Shelley White has been talking about here too, is putting in those proper right into the standards. And we actually have an industry committee working right now where we work with regulators and we connecting them to sportsbook operators and to other regulators in other jurisdictions, so they can ensure that they can learn from the best practices to ensure that we have those age and identity verification models. We have the requirement that responsible gambling tools for player education are built into the product. Those are going to come in the regulatory framework. So.
Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Burns. Thank you, Mr. Cooper. We'll now go to our next questioner, Mr. Virani, for 5 minutes. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thanks to all of the witnesses for a lot of educative and informative information. I'm going to start with Mr. Dias. Jerry, it's always good to see you. Thank you for what you're doing with Unifor. There are many Unifor members in my riding of Parkdale Park, and I've always appreciated the leadership you've shown. I want to ask you, Mr. Dias, just at the outset about something that is sort of percolating in the background, which is the horse racing industry. And in the other iteration of this bill, which is the government bill C-13, there's a carve out for horse racing. And we understand from a lot of horse racing witnesses that are about to come before us that they're keen to see a carve out because they want to protect those jobs at those racetracks. I'm in Toronto, that's close to Woodbine, etc. Can you tell me about those workplaces and your sense of how do we protect those jobs? Whether I'm not sure whether they're unionized by Unifor, if they're unionized at all, but how do we protect those workers from your perspective?
Okay, Mark, would you like to answer this question?
Sure. Yeah, there are actually, speaking of Woodbine specifically, several unions that represent workers there. It's actually a fairly highly unionized workplace. We represent members there as well. We haven't taken a position on the carve out specifically for the horse industry yet, but we certainly would be in favor of kind of a fair treatment, I think, across the board for all gaming operators, including those involved in horse racing and the betting there. And you know, from my experience, having worked alongside the leadership there, the jobs that at racetracks, similar to what Jerry had said about other gaming jobs, are much more high quality than those in the regular service sector. So they're higher wages, they come with health benefits, you know, they come with retirement security in some form or another. So these are really, they're kind of Cadillac jobs in the service industry. And so anything we can do to protect the jobs that exist, but also grow them and create more jobs, we would be very supportive of course, as long as there are the right controls in place in terms of, you know, responsible gambling and so on and so forth.
Okay, and that leads me to my next question. So to both of you, again, sticking with Jerry and Mark, or Mr. Holland and Mr. Dias, I should be more formal. This issue, whatever, fair enough. But what I've also always appreciated is also sort of the equity issues that you always put at the forefront of Unifor's activities, right? So I've met with Unifor members on various issues that are just about sort of equality in our society. So given that vantage point, that philosophical orientation, what are you guys doing actively on this responsible gambling front in terms of all of the pushback we get from the other side, which is that addictions, et cetera, need to be considered? We've heard testimony about this today from Ms. White and Ms. Parker, but I'm just wondering about Unifor, whether it's your employees at the casinos, for example, or otherwise, how are you advocating for that responsible gambling approach?
Okay, well, first of all, as I am appearing before the panel, our National Executive Board is meeting right now, virtually, of course, of which Dana Duffy is on our National Executive Board, one of 25 rank and filers who is the chairperson at Casino Windsor. So we spent a lot of time with the various gaming owners talking about equity issues and hiring practices, diversity. So you will find that our workplaces, by and large, reflect the communities in which we live. So we are not only speaking to the employers about this within the gaming sector, but I can argue predominantly in many sectors right across our union. So we see these are well-paying middle-class jobs, and we have a heck of a discussion about what our workplaces should look like, if that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you for that, Mr. Dias. And maybe I'll just finish with Mr. Burns, because you mentioned the sole instance of sort of match fixing in Canada being this sort of English bookmakers meddling with a lower level Canadian Soccer League. And I'm actually concerned about the lower paid athletes, right? So I'm juxtaposing Austin Matthews with a $10 million contract with somebody in the East Coast Hockey League with a $30,000 contract. What do we need to do to ensure that lower paid athletes who are still professionals, but maybe also have secondary jobs, are protected from match fixing influences?
Well, what you have first off is that which sports will be bet on. And that's where sportsbook operators, it's not everything in many cases. They need to understand the certainty of data and player performance all goes into what sports are bet on. The big thing is it's any athlete, it's about education. It's amateur athletes. It is lower pay. It's all of those. Professional tennis has had many, because of their pay structure, has had many issues related to that. Because if you're outside the top 50 in the world, you don't really make any money in the tennis world. So there are those issues that need to be discussed, and bringing them in the open, and those education programs are necessary. And that's what's occurring around the world. And those discussions need to continue. They need to be brought into Canadian sport in a more direct and robust fashion. But all of the sports bodies around across the nation and their international bodies they work with are all, this is a topic, this is very much a part of their programming and the work they do. And it just becomes part of the dialogue that needs to happen.
Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Burns. Thanks, Mr. Virani. We'll now go to Mr. Fortin for 2.5 minutes. Go ahead, sir.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question was to Mr. Dias. Mr. Dias, I understand that your members, unionized members, are always exposed in the gaming industry, always exposed to compulsive gamblers and to the problems that brings. Have many of your members with compulsive gambling issues been detected? How do you articulate what you do to fight such problems?
Thank you. That's a very good question. And obviously our members are trained how to deal with aggressive gamblers. Our members have internal workplace protocols. So if a patron is identified as being aggressive to anyone, it's dealt with immediately. So our members are surrounded with this on a regular basis, but are incredibly well trained to deal with individuals. So like I said, we have workplace mechanisms and strategies in place that deal with this.
Est-ce que vous considérez que...
Do you feel, well, do you have members who are themselves compulsive gamblers?
Of course, we have members who are compulsive gamblers. Our members would be a reflection of the Canadian society on a whole. But you'll find that our members that work in the gaming sector are not allowed to participate. Myself, I'm not allowed to go into, for an example, into a Unifor gaming facilities just based on regulation. So I think our members are not allowed to participate. So what their rates are for gaming members, I'm not sure. Do we have members that work in different sectors with addictions? The answer is absolutely yes.
Je vous remercie, Monsieur Diaz, mais je comprends que vos joueurs...
Thank you. I understand that your members are not authorized to play in casinos in which they work, but to your knowledge, can they use other casinos or can they gamble online or abroad? Is there any problem of that kind?
Well, not to my knowledge. And we have a very active gaming council where we have the local union leadership from across the country participating. And within the numerous challenges that we are dealing with and that they speak of within our sector, having discussions about our own members with these types of workplace addictions, we haven't talked about.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Mr. Fortin, you had 20 seconds extra that time. We'll go to Mr. Massey now for 2.5 minutes. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and hopefully I don't lose Mr. Dias this time. Real quickly, with regards to building back from COVID, Kevin Lafayette for Casino Windsor, and I'm sure it's across the other sectors as well too. You mentioned Denny Duffy and her crew there and others. If this goes past, even with restrictions, they've indicated that they can actually increase employment right now to prepare for it. And yes, and so and they're ready to go. They're eager. Can you maybe express a little bit the frustration for some of the workers right now as the pride they take in not being able to work at all?
Well, first of all, I mean, having a restriction of 50 people, I understand the preoccupation with safety, and that has to be everyone's preoccupation today. But it can't be a situation where one solution fits all. You can't have a casino the size of Casino Windsor being restricted to 50 people, and having a casino a fraction of that size being restricted to 50 people doesn't make a lot of sense to me. But there is no question that if in fact the single sports betting is allowed, there will be infrastructure spending, jobs created, preparing the casino for a new form of betting. And obviously, once again, it'll create more jobs for the implementation of the strategy.
Okay, thank you. And quickly over to Mr. Burns. I was in Niagara Falls and heard the same thing, that they're looking at doing millions of expansions right now to deal with and using this as an opportunity, if we can get this done quickly through here in the Senate with the numbers down, to invest and get prepared. Is that what you're hearing?
Very much so. They would be able to move very swiftly to create an environment. They've identified the parts of the building where they would like to renovate and move to get the product available as soon as possible. I know it's bringing people back into gaming facilities is a priority, and having a new product and a new offering is what really making them have some optimism at this point in time as they've looked, because Niagara Falls has not reopened at all since last March.
So I assume that's going to be the same thing across Vancouver and other places like that. They'll all look at their operations now, what they can do, and use this to their advantage because there's no getting back time.
That's correct, and that we've been talking with provincial gaming organizations, lottery and gaming corporations across the country. We want to see land-based gaming operators have the opportunity to offer sports books as quickly as possible, find the right products to be able to put in place, and so those discussions are happening, because there are really across the country, everybody's quite eager. You heard from Mr. Hansen earlier. You also, Alberta Gaming and Liquor Commission, British Columbia Lottery Corporation, all have been publicly saying we need to see this passed soon.
Thank you very much, Mr. Massey. That was an extra 20 seconds for you as well. So with that, I'd like to thank our witnesses for your testimony today. Would really appreciate your time. And just before members go, I see that Mr. Cooper has his hand raised. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to seek clarification in terms of a deadline for the submission.
That's exactly what I was going to talk about just now before we adjourn today. So the two major deadlines. The deadline for written submissions, Mr. Cooper, and for all members is March 11th, 4 p.m. and that is taking into account the translation time and also giving enough time between that deadline and the deadline for submitting amendments as well. So March 11th, 4 p.m. will be the deadline for written submissions for Bill C-218. And then the second deadline, I know we had talked about it last meeting, but I'll just remind members, March 23rd, 4 p.m. will be the deadline for amendments by members to Bill C-18. And if any of you have any questions, concerns, please don't hesitate to reach out to me, to the clerk. And as you know, that the legislative clerk is at your service to help you draft amendments should you so need. Just reach out and we'll be happy to provide you with that support. And then we will get right into our next meeting, which will be another meeting on C-218 with more witnesses. Are there any more questions from members at this time on what's happening in the next couple of weeks? No, does that answer your questions, Mr. Cooper?
Yes, very well.
Thank you.
Madame la Présidente.
Madam Chair, thank you very much for your extra time that you gave the witnesses to answer my questions given the delay with interpretation. 3 proposals have been tabled with the clerk about different management issues with the committee, and I would like us to discuss those, but I want everything to be done in the right order. I've tabled them a week or 2 ago. Could we discuss this now, or should we do it when we come back from the leave, from our ridings?
Well, I leave it to the members to decide if they want to discuss Monsieur Fortin's motions. I believe that the motions are in order. We've received enough notice for them to discuss them, but if we want to have a substantive discussion, Monsieur Fortin, then I suggest we do it at the next meeting. But if you'd like to quickly talk about them, we can do it now.
OK, mais j'ai pas vraiment d'arguments élaborés à faire là-dessus. Je pense que les propositions parlent par elles-mêmes. C'est très simple. Si vous voulez qu'on le fasse tout de suite, on peut le faire. Si les membres ont devant eux les motions en question, là, mais une sur la révision linguistique des documents, une autre sur les essais techniques.
Sorry,
avant
Madam Chair, sorry to interrupt.
Yes.
We're okay?
Je suis toujours...
I'm very happy when I see that some Anglophone colleague has a problem with interpretation. I don't feel so alone anymore. Not that the interpreters aren't doing their job right. They're doing an exceptional job. But I just wanted to say, Madam Speaker, that the motions are self-explanatory. They're simple and short. One of them is about when documents are tabled, they should be in both official languages. Another one is about sound tests before, and another one is about linguistic revision. In our committee, I don't think there are problems. In other committees, there have been problems, so I wanted to table those motions in all committees. I don't have many arguments to go with that. They're self-explanatory.
Monsieur Fortin, and before we engage in this conversation, I'd like to let our witnesses go so they don't have to stay for this part. But thank you very much for being here today. Thank you for your testimony. If there's anything that you'd like to provide further clarification on, please don't hesitate to submit written clarifications or additions to your testimony today. Would appreciate that. Thank you. And then now we'll go back to Monsieur Fortin. And maybe I'll turn to Mr. Clerk to kind of explain these 3 motions and go from there, Mr. Clerk.
Je suis un peu pris par surprise là. Il faudrait que je...
I'm caught by surprise. I'm sorry. I have to go back to the text of the motions and have it on my computer. I think that you have heard.
I understand Monsieur Fortin wants to go ahead with it. I'm already late for my next meeting. We were supposed to adjourn at 10, and to now start into a whole new area talking about I'm not prepared for this discussion, frankly. I didn't know we were going to be dealing with this today, and I would really I would ask that we end the meeting today and take this up next time.
And I agree. C'est correct pour moi, Madame la Présidente.
Monsieur?
It's fine with me to you.
Juste le prévoir pour la prochaine rencontre.
Maybe we can put it on the agenda for next time. 5-10 minutes will suffice. I have no problems with that. Okay?
Absolutely. We'll go ahead and do that for the next meeting. Thank you, Madame Finley. Thank you to all members. This meeting is now adjourned. Thank you.
Merci.
Thank you, Monsieur Fortin. Merci.
Merci à vous.